his new dish, but he just can't seem to get it right. Meanwhile, during his regular working hours, Aini and his father focus on the restaurant and cooking. Delicious food that all visitors love. The girls are literally bursting with how delicious it is. So, even though the restaurant is small, it will always have lots of customers. They go to Bavli, but Soma's father, Yukihira Junchira, runs the restaurant. The regulars love this place. It fills their lives with joy. Well, until Soma or his dad want to let them try new brands. This time, it's squid that just wraps everyone with its fatty tentacles. And hey, it's tough to get through, of course. They even have a rating of the worst dishes. But their little restaurant is located in a place where they want to build a new house, and so they ran into some problems and people came who wanted to tear it down. This place has a big story, lady. Says they want to build a big house here. Of course, they politely refuse her and simply toast her business card. But things aren't as simple as they seem. As Soma was heading home, after school, Dad mentioned he got some matters to attend to. Quite surprising for Soma, given his dad's heavy commitment to his restaurant. But nothing to be done about it. When he got home, he saw that the entire restaurant was simply trashed. Food thrown out, and the restaurant was covered in all sorts of filth. Then that very lady I mentioned, same, the one you told me I could come to any time for food. She ordered food, and she ordered a steak, which under current conditions was simply impossible to prepare. Felt that the young man had already lost, the lady relaxed and was ready to tear down the building with a smirk on her face. But not so. That's when it happened. Soma put on his headband and got ready to cook with what was left, which was only potatoes and bacon. He chopped the potatoes, sliced the onions, put it all in the little oven, wrapped in bacon, and it turned out to be a very tasty dish. The Yuda potatoes. Inside it soaked up the bacon flavor. The marinated meat ended up very juicy, but the lady wasn't thrilled. She ordered just steak, she ordered tasty meat like in a restaurant, but this was off. Smelling the dish, she immediately sensed it was something tasty. And when she cut it and took a bite, she was just blown away by how filling the food was and how tasty it could be. But Summer said that I'm throwing all this away because you want to shut down our restaurant. Yes, I invested a lot of effort. I made a masterpiece out of this dish. I wrapped centuries into the potato. It soaked up all those juices and turned out simply divine. But you don't need that. However, sensing the smell, the girl wanted to try more. He says, well, there's no restaurant, so I'm throwing this out, and she just started begging him to let her keep the food. I was eating and was ready to not put up with them. And then the guys just pounced on the food and devastated it. Soma did what was good. Left any new visitors? Well, now it's time to make the restaurant look beautiful. Can't just leave it like that. The father saw how Soma was taking care of all this and told him he's closing. At the restaurant, Soma was totally amazed at that moment. The father told him that he needed to go to school for chefs, and that he's leaving for work somewhere else. When Soma arrived at this school, he saw a lot of competitions. It's all clear. Meanwhile, they show us a girl considered a local idol. She tries all the dishes and can sense something's off, that it's not her, in a thin soup. The smell of a macaque. And then Father Summer called to tell him that this establishment trains the best chefs in the world, and added that he himself is now on the rise, working in the best in a restaurant in France. If Soma can't break free, he'll never catch up to his father. This made Soma furious, and he kicked the nearest bench. So, he had to apologize to the guy, but he wasn't that upset. They started to figure out who. That is to say, whoever explains that this one is truly accounting cooking, it's like, TDCC. Asks who Soma is, but he says he works in a regular dive. Well, the guy booted him out since he's from the upper crust. His restaurant just serves a bunch of people. As for Soma, he got mad and said that guy never worked a day in his life. Seeing all those stuck-up penguins, Soma was even more furious. And when they arrived at the first qualifying exam, they were met by the very same Monkey Myrina who smells monkeys in soups and no one is not through just like that. Her task was simple: to make a dish. A wonder from one? Specifically from an egg. After which everyone just ran out in fear. Soma didn't understand what it was, stopped the guy from the bench, and he said if she ruins their dish, their restaurant will be shut down forever. For it is considered the best language in Japan. She could understand from childhood which way to go with her eyes closed, and in the end, only the evil one remained. Soma, he was terrified that he would have to write an exam in this place, but it turns out they will let him in. He can cook something up, and if he can cook, then it's no problem for him. Took a good look at what could be done with all that. Then I saw scene. Say to it, I'll put on my war headband, otherwise I'll never guess. Well, it's necessary to prepare something unusual, something that would even surprise this lady. They watch him cook using some ice and creating something utterly bizarre. He mumbles something under his breath. They look at the dish and it's just simple egg balls. Nothing surprising. Well, she was quite something. Started showing off at first, but then took a closer look and realized the dish wasn't as simple as it seemed. The needle line of what they see, are we lighting that all mine? Soma ended up sprawled out, and these egg balls with fish fat on rice turned into a tasty candy. The girl said that she will, after all, decide to try this. And having tried it, even she couldn't resist such deliciousness with the dish, but she was ashamed that she even liked it, and she didn't let it through. In the end, he just told how he cooked it, that he added fish to it, blanched the cabbage to make everything lighter, and that's why it turned out so tasty. The girl couldn't resist and tried it again, and her body was filled with energy from this food. But she still began to show off and continued to stand her ground, saying she couldn't let such a blockhead into the academy. He's utterly talentless. Therefore, she also said that she definitely wouldn't allow him, and Sova was embarrassed that he gave up right away. Was playing. At that time, it introduces us to another future participant of this series, which all the villages sent to this institution for education and balance. The last hope of her village, but upon arriving there, she found out she was expelled because of a single failing grade. Then began the gathering of all the students. Maki Myrin, as always, awarded for everything best in this world. And the one who began the speech was actually the principal of this school. He started telling everyone how great it was that they came, that they are the future in terms of cooking in Japan, and they won't be causing trouble here. It's easy. Half of them will be out on the first task. Only a few will make it to the end, but these few, they'll get into any restaurant they want. They come in and will most likely open their own, and they gave their word to the only one who passed the selection stage. It turned out to be Soma, as he thought they were all pompous penguins who had never worked. He basically did just that to them. He said he'd easily make it through this whole school, and he will become the best in it to show his dad where crayfish hibernate. They were offended by him because they are from the upper class. They have their own restaurants there, and he stands out from his diners. After that, Soma ends up in the school's kitchen and their adventure continues. A preparation lesson where you need to get ready. And food, they were teamed up with this little girl, and their kitchen was entered by none other than another super mega balloon. Everyone was shocked when he showed up in their class, asking for no less than to have some food prepared for him. In an hour, basically everyone rushed to cook faster, and Soma, as always, didn't understand what to do. He looked at the recipe closely. There he had us. While he was just looking for the spice, he saw and he saw that their pot had been lifted. Opens it, and the meat is all over salted. And just like that, the girl started to lose hope. But Soma, as always, took out a knife, tied his bandana, and got down to business. To the matter by, some passed first and received a good grade. At that time, Soma brought a steak too. And the man was surprised at how quickly he managed to do it. The catfish explained that he had coated the meat with honey, so it cooks faster. And it turned out super juicy. How does he know that? It was in his books about father. And when the little guy tried, the meat was just drenched in honey. And he would have given him a grade higher than possible, but alas, it cannot be done. And those guys who tried to mess with them, they were booted out. Well, he also let the girl try his honey octopus, which is how he was trying to make it back to his dorm. In a school located who knows where, because this school is full of all sorts of inexplicable trendy stuff. But the guy navigated as best he could by the map and arrived at some house that seemed to be haunted. Scary stuff. And then they go in, everything's smoky, some animals are running, and there's this half-dead glowing thing. Who asks if he's ready for the competition? He didn't understand which competition it was, he had no ingredients, and on the dormitory paper it said to get in there. And to live, you need to cook delicious food that affirms this. But he said it doesn't matter if you got nothing in your kitchen, show me around, I'll figure it out. Kitchen, level. There are only 5 eggs in the fridge. Well, the dude started making something out of eggs again. He's got eggs, he made a steak. Out of your eggs, canned fish, using its oil for the sauce. So the patty It turned out very juicy to the point that Grandma just saw the light. She even took a sip of the soup but didn't understand how he made it. Axoma always carries an octopus with him. Granny even remembered the good old days when she sat with a sneezy boy and almost inhaled Soma, so he had to fend her off. After that, he went to take a thorough wash and met a girl there. It was unexpected. So she screamed and kicked him out, and he went to his room. Basically, it's a place in the Eftem dormitory. He received it, and looking at the ceiling, he sees his neighbor opening it. Turns out the guy was also hanging out upstairs at that time, in honor of, let's say, the housewarming, so everyone decided to get acquainted and drank some rice juice. Too bad it wasn't booze. Meanwhile, Grandma says she had some extra ingredients, so the kids immediately went to pick them up. But here begins the most interesting story about the grade 10, and those that Soma neither dreams nor knows about. In short, these are the coolest guys in this school. Neither the principal nor the teachers can expel them. Getting there was quite tough. Then one of the members of this very 10 appeared, and they decided to fight for the future of their dormitory to ensure everyone was strict, studied hard, and made progress. But then Soma decided to compete with this dude from the grade 10. Try his dishes. It was a regular competition just to see who cooks how, but both took it quite seriously. Soma, as always, pulled out his bolt and stretched it over his head. And for that, the rest of the students woke up, seeing their fierce battle. And the battle. Soma began cooking fish, and he needed to deal with this guy, and he's no simpleton. In short, he did it, not just simply. And fish ramen, if you may, is just the thing after a fierce drink of juice, which made a tasty tea. Overall, guys, trying this out and overcoming is just the thing after a hard day. At the same time, everyone was surprised where he knows such technique, and Soma himself said that he does not know what he did. He simply repeated what his father taught him, because his father could make a lot of different food. In short, all the kids piled on, had a tasty meal, and after that, the guy acknowledged Soma. And he decided to tell him that he could find out everything he wants, and he himself decided to find out how to win over this great girl. 10 because he needs to impress his father so that he can express happiness to him. The guy mentioned cooking duels but didn't explain anything to you, so the other one met him at 7 in the morning and decided to challenge him to this very cooking duel. And it was me with you, goodbye! Roma didn't know the rules, that is a whole part of the show at school. For instance, now Samurai is competing with Maki Morigana for his I think in general the rules are such that you need to agree on the terms first. In the case of Soma, to get into the top 7, was that even his exclusion would be too small because a 7 is costly, and the guy says he could take Soma's challenge but doesn't want to exclude him. Generally, you need at least 3 judges, and the number of judges should be odd. It's a quantity, and both participants must agree to the transaction terms. During this time, it shows how brutal a culinary competition can be, as the samurai still lost. After tasting his food, Makima felt like she was on a beach where hippos run through, and it's just terrible beach food. When he tasted her food, it felt like he was being punched in the face with taste receptors. Basically, they demolished everything he gave, and at that moment, they show another girl who wants to take over the club for herself. Catfish wakes up and sees the guy again in the morning, looking at it. They're in their dorm, doing lots of useful things. They grow. Food is grown by everyone a bit at a time, and everyone should contribute to it. Take care. After all, our own food is much better than store-bought. Of course, the dishes turn out much better since they are all chefs after all. A sweet girl made tasty treats for everyone. Food, showing in herself that she can do something on her own. If only she did that at the competitions. Other guys from the dorm were caught up in their club activities, so Soma learned that he needs to join a club. He joined the ramen club, and it turns out they want to take it over. Meanwhile, the club's content is quite successful, with many interesting recipes. And Soma found out that Nikki and Aaron sent her like wanting to lay eggs. Many clubs to overall have a lot of influence, and already the guys came to tear down this club because the guy didn't accept the competition. But Soma, seeing this lady, immediately knew she was skilled in what she does, and he himself decided to challenge her to a culinary duel for it. With the condition that if he loses, the club will be demolished, but if he wins, she will join the club. And a girl asks what Soma's plan is, and he says that there's no plan yet. And no, he started to study study hard, looking for ways to improve udon, and in principle, they conducted a huge analysis about it. And you would explain that there are many different types of meat. And the best one is, again, the juiciest steak. Since that's the case, the guys decided to ask the club leader how much money they have, but there's no money. And that's why Soma quickly went to withdraw his funds, but his father robbed him, taking a loan. In general, they cope as they can, so with little money, they bought budget meat to try and make something out of it. Oh, you need to prepare thoroughly. Poor guy stuffed himself with meat so much that he just couldn't get up, but the girl immediately lifted him. After all the tests, Soma realized that udon non but they still compete in meat cooking, specifically in salads. He focused on steaks, so he decided to make one, frying the meat and adding fried onions. Unknowingly, he created a shallopin steak. Tasting it, the girl was over the moon, and the meat is so thin that it can be cut with a chopstick, and unbelievably tasty. Overall, the preparation for the competition was successful and the local idol announces participation. The contest, and of course, envies that meat roll. Then Soma appears, who the whole school can hardly see, as he stood out too much at the very beginning. But having bandaged himself, putting on a thinking cap, he started cooking while the girl brought a whole uncut chicken, the carcass, which she herself butchered into a perfect steak and started to cook. Clearly, she's a master at it. First, she seared it nicely, giving it a crust, and put it in the oven for full conditioning. At this time, Soma is getting meat on sale, happy that it turned out so cheap. After tasting her own meat, the girl realized it was all over and the guy definitely lost. She started showing off, but Soma quickly put her in her place. But this was and he would say, "Wait your turn," smelling the scent of his onion, divu ahudi. In short, the bell rang, and after which you can cook. The girl brought out her meat carcass, in the form of a beautiful roast which all the judges liked. At that time, Soma brought a so-so dish at first glance. But when he opened it, everyone could smell the delicious aroma. But that's not all. The most amazing part started when they began to eat it. The girl thought she had already won, and such a disgraceful dish wouldn't even be eaten to the end. But what a horror happened. They just started eating him non-stop, and it's all thanks to this wonderful onion that heats up. But the most interesting thing is hidden inside this dish, because Soma added rice delights to it, which only whetted people's appetites. At this time, nobody even finished their serving of the lady's dish, and here her defeat was unanimous. Meanwhile, she had a taste herself. But with Soma's dish, the girl just couldn't stop and was gobbling it up greedily. Basically, now she's in their club and was thrown to arena's chemo. Then all the students are sent to a summer camp where, in the end, only half of the students will continue with their studies. In short, the grandma decided to introduce a break in the morning. And the guys went out this trip, the best hotel in Japan. And Soma tried to act as if there was nothing unusual about him until he found out the goal for the number. And this event will be hosted by previous Tatsuki graduates who have their own restaurants where our guys will work, so he immediately ruled out the first magazine. The young man for his hair smelling, with citrus, losing a potential client in the process.
And the main thing in this whole establishment is that bald guy, cause it's his resort and they will work on it. Because not only Soma was working in his world here, with their hands. At the first contest, they ended up at this beanery. The chief he gave them he gave a simple task. He cooked something with what's around. They said just him. Niyasajin scared most of the kids, since few had ever foraged for their own food. Can't say the same for this blonde guy, because he's a pro at this, and decided to challenge her to see who cooks better, him or Soma. But truth be told, he messed up, because this Chapasasam, he was given a completely different task. Anyway, most people just went fishing, which Soma did too. But most likely, the fish will bore the examiner, so the blonde coat simply... and they and their brother Sekovasamati made her skillfully slice it. Afterwards, Soma, true to form, wrapped a bandage around his head and started cooking it. At that time, the Belarusians and their brother had already prepared their food, and Madame liked it very much. They also made a very tasty sauce from local mushrooms. Herbs, says he didn't mind these herbs. After all, it's not for nothing that they own the restaurant, and not without reason their father sent them to that school to hone their skills for the father. And he could manage on his own, but worse about people who can't work with their hands, this blonde couldn't tolerate. Ledichkash decided to judge their fight after all, and Soma took this matter much more seriously. He ordered more ingredients he needed and stole persimmons from Divai. Basically, he grabbed some eggs and had only 15 minutes left to cook, but they all came together and quickly made something very tasty. using that very form. Grinding it, frying the fish and serving it. In reality, it was the same fish that the examiner had eaten everywhere. But biting into it, she was simply astonished by how Soma so Soma ingeniously decided to cook it, and it wasn't the same as she had been eating all day. I showed that she's drowning with a handsome man. And basically everyone passed, but she didn't manage to judge their fight because she had to leave in a hurry. So the guys remained in jail. But they realized they were each other's respected rivals, and Soma, for the first time in a long while, understood that joining this school was not in vain. In general, next in line, they needed to feed the gachibes as well. Wild ducks, to make them 50 steaks, it's still a relatively simple task, but not for everyone, and they have a hole for it. An hour passed. In short, the Pokuk started to hurry, and they were really chased by this pumpkin, which was very tough. Feasting, but Soma was the first to prepare 50 portions of steaks and went hard into the sauna party. And just as he started to go there, he met Inakimu Airinu on the way, who just spread out in the middle, and she complained that he carried her off. He said he was the first to make 50 steaks, and the fool really took a dive. But Nakimarin's girlfriend got upset, asking why he's pushing her back and forth. Basically, he didn't need these squabbles, and he went swimming. As he enters the water, there's some seriously buff dude, and this is the very bold guy who owns the resort. In general, they talked about how last year Chelok, who lives in Soma's dome, also finished this contest first, and usually this rarely happens, and Baldy tries to leave there earlier, and when Soma's blonde rival came, he was surprised that he was fucking first.
What did he accidentally
Soma's
say?
last name made the bold guy realize that Soma is a special dude.
Then, as per usual, they all gathered in
How I'm
classes.
drenched. Online, you see, it always annoyed him
well,
to celebrate
they
that he
still
didn't drink a
haven't
single
failed.
task. At the next task, he encountered a red-haired man who basically...
Dear Jesus.
Your own dish.
And you must follow the recipe strictly, and under no circumstances. Oh, here, Pasi.
Step away from it.
Everyone works at the same time.
Individually.
Quickly pick some vegetables.
Vegetable recipe.
But the blue-haired device.
Leftover food, not fresh.
In general, he saw that someone...
Bones.
And
Immediately and without delay.
Kick out.
The first guys who started coming were mercilessly kicked out, but the dish...
Redhead liked it, and
You
he...
piece of Ari. Shoasita tickled. Then came a blue-haired girl who was ruthlessly expelled from this institution. He, of course, quite
continued?
She was fired over a dish, but she changed his recipe, attempting to revive the cabbage, which Soma didn't like because it's an occupational hazard and such things can happen in any case. He was told off for deliberately leaving the food spoiled. A true chef, a real oatmeal expert, should know better.
Fire.
The girl told Soma to do nothing, but he challenged the redhead to a culinary duel. The bold guy was supported. Tianochka decided to tell the redhead that he's a loser. Even the bold guy started persuading him to compete. It definitely won't make things worse for him. Well, and they will exclude the summon. The girl too, if they lose. But he said he's not doing it for her, but for himself. And he was furious.
You're out of
Really good, but the bold one prepared a nasty trick and will be the head chef. A blue-haired girl. She was obviously flustered, Soma noticed, and decided to cheer her up by patting her hand so she would pull herself together. And she really got ready. But Soma, as the second chef, immediately started to pick up everything after her, put a bandage on his head. They put their heads together and started acting according to her plan. As soon as she forgot something, Soma immediately provided what was needed. And it was very easy for her to manage in the kitchen, so they managed just fine in an hour. The first dish to go into battle. The dish was actually the chef's, and it was perfect and all. It made her happy and only gave strength to those who have it, but not surprisingly because this recipe was very popular among folks long ago. But the next dish was already there. The father and the girl didn't make a vegetable rabbit. Everyone started trying it, and the girl started having flashbacks of failures. But to her surprise, everyone liked that egg, and they all appreciated it duly, especially the part with two different sauces, to each their own. If it's to their liking, they'll give it a try. In the classic style,
You girls.
and everyone felt a fierce chill when they started eating this dish. It was necessary to lay out coins on the plates of the one who would win, and the redhead collected 3 coins. Teams, sums, verdict, the drafters. But you can't just disregard such talented individuals. So Baldy got crafty, tossed in his coin, and let the redhead have a go. A chance to leave the guys and the boxer
Redhead,
behind. Originally came to France as a loser. Went to a restaurant where he wasn't the main guy, but after a while he showed he was really cool, threw all the trash out, and he simply took his place at the top of the pedestal. But he faced a problem. He had garnered widespread fame, and he was left alone at the top with nowhere else to go. And he decided to try the guy's dish, and it really inspired him. He even remembered his childhood in the village, digging around with his mother. In the mud and with tears in his eyes, the little man dropped the coin for taking the time to encourage him and perhaps showing the way what to pay attention to while cooking. Basically, the guys decided not to kick, but Soma was just as upset as if he had been kicked because it was the first time he lost seriously. At that time, the man in the 7th seat realized that his kids had become super polite, and the wonder of this establishment continues just the same. The guys compete, and Soma realizes he has room to grow, and they compete. A lot of interesting people. Now, the bald guy said they will need to make breakfast from a single dish.
Yes, actually, the main thing...
Gradients for every and breakfast. Makima decided to tell Sobe not to do the same thing she had liked before, and he pointed out that she really liked it before. In general, the guys started preparing to come up with all the dishes in advance for the morning. Zulma came up with a decent recipe and was ready to outsmart everyone.
Parasite. Well, until it's fully cooked.
He was defeated.
I had to think of something more interesting, but I got from the white-haired that she finished her dish and left. In general, the next morning, Soma figured out how to add a twist to his dish, and the visitors came for breakfast. Everyone went to see what everyone had, and they began to quietly stock up on eggs. The task for the guys is simple. They just need to have only 200 portions of breakfast eaten, given that almost all are prepared in advance, and it will be relatively easy. But of course, not everyone can handle such a rush of action, and the dishes were as diverse as possible considering Igor Ilyinich was the same. Some were surprisingly, and some were, in my opinion,
Even worse than
burgers, but still made of egg inside, which amazed the visitors.
People managed to add that.
And coffee, anything.
I hope you...
Watching the visitors while being...
I'm scared.
Note, its dish is outperformed in all
Damn
aspects.
straight.
It maintains focus.
You only have 10 minutes, and that's it.
Everything looked
It's
very...
bad and sad. He hasn't sold a single portion yet, while the others were almost finishing their task.
Left, right.
Very amazing dishes.
Egg glacé.
Even in the egg drink, it wasn't egg, but a milkshake. What a surprise. For the morning, it was refreshing enough, and the maiden had already sold those portions.
Excellent.
And it was only the 33rd minute of the competition. Soma figured that in this time, in principle, he could handle everything, and decided to put his bandage on his head and begin to actively prepare, attracting visitors. And the first was the maiden who approached by chance.
It's on me.
Having tried it, she immediately caught the attention of other visitors. In general, everyone praised his grandfather so much that an incredible queue formed, and he caught attention by cooking food on the go, and the blonde ran out of plates completely. She sold 400%. Soma was sweating unreal, cooking on the go and attracting people. By doing so, he sped up in completing the task, and it was really spectacular, drawing more and more people, which probably even hindered other participants in this fight. Observers of the contest were surprised at how Soma tried to wriggle out of this
in the
season.
situation
Chopping on
that,
real speed, he had just 5 minutes 10 seconds left, and he still needed to sell 200 portions, and on the last second he managed when almost lost. In short, the situation was unconventional, and he managed as best as he could. At the time, Belobris accused him that he was doing everything wrong in science, but Soma always does everything not according to science, but as he feels. In short, then the bold one gave cue to the students, and said that now the examiners themselves would be cooking the dishes, allowing them to have a decent meal in peace. Then what next? It was time to gather. Everyone invited whoever they wanted to their restaurants, but Soma showed that he listens to the only one restaurant. His dad's restaurant, but when he went, the fox realized it was that very blue bittern. And as Soma was riding home, he realized he had lost his bandage, went back, and then it was just old men on the bus. Basically, everyone had left. Only Nakimegene is left. Well, what are we doing? Her fiance cut Soma off along with the ocean. They had a little argument with each other, but when she just started freaking out, Soma just fell asleep. And then, out of nowhere, Soma's dad came to their dorm. And when he came back, he immediately noticed father realized what he needed to do, help him cook, and he was shocked that he came. Wow! To himself, while how legendary his father is known by everyone except Soma himself because he was in the top 10 in the past. And having eaten his food, everyone simply pucked up. Well, showed his son his worst new dish, and Grandma talked about her times when their dormitory was thriving because they had 2 people from the top 10. Basically, a dad and his son at the market.
Or as in the old days, before the break.
The management saw me working. But when
Suna place went to sleep, the father saw that even in the same room lived Soma and told him about what is
A
there.
burnt
That
scar?
only her personal recipe proved, but then it shows us a snippet as well as Myrin with Moe on Father
I'll
Soma.
raise her up for
Apparently,
biscuit
he taught her how to cook. At this time, Soma and his father decided to really go all out with feasts at the competitions. But for now, Vitus. You see, we just need to feed them healthy
Quite
food.
so this-
Soma finished first. He did it. He made the food.
And that one with the fresh apple.
Omega is very
It was just-
inspiring for those who were very hungry. You could also
Sprinkle
drink
quietly,
this pepper.
and then it will be fierce
Or
while I'm
rather,
turkey.
he was supposed to make porridge, but with
I
his
can't do
brains.
it. Got
Added
mixed up
apple
then.
juice in the end.
But that surprised the boys much
He
more.
just cheered them up and gave a new taste.
Life,
Grandma looks 15 years younger.
in general, they couldn't stop eating botyok.
And
Raham beat Soma. It's almost his 500th loss to Dad, but Dad acknowledged that Soma got stronger. Well, I've got my son up to speed. Time to get back to work.
It's about time.
Summer holidays. The girl was looking at Soma's restaurant and missing it, and then bam, out of Soma's he came.
therefore-
he decided to work over the summer.
He was preparing, and found out that they were like that.
Neighborhoods aren't doing so great.
And the thing is, a new diner opened up in the mall next door, serving tasty meatballs. That's why they're streets. There was complete silence because at that time only Soma's restaurant could attract visitors. But Soma said he would restore its former glory and will let people live. And remembering about the meat, he remembered the butcher girl.
Eating
She's
a magic.
against all that, but the next day she went ahead and showed
Let's
up.
dip it to see what's
Here's
here.
what's happening. And the first thing they did was scout around and see a lot. Tasty local spheres, and in general, the manager of these spheres didn't just give them away. Be stingy! And that's all. And she approached them, revealing they noticed they had a beautiful packaging and each tried a bowl. And the bowl just attacked them with its flavor. Months, what they liked, at first glance. But she said that Soma could never do that again, and it was a challenge for him. He tried to make tasty balls that well, his girlfriend liked it. But overall, the meat lady offered herself
Uncle Balloons from Bulgaria.
delicious meat, but this was beyond Somi's budget, and he pondered how to cope with it. At that time, the manager laughed to his boss that Soma couldn't do that again. And then they realized they were having a crowd surge on the street. They could only manage not because of the interesting taste, but because of Upo Yai. The score, visitors, and good service. And that one can come up with all sorts of options to keep the visitors engaged, but the manageress still doesn't realize that her business is about to end because Soma has already come up with several ideas. Grabbed the wormy package and with the meat lady took on the task. Bisarilla with a plushie ordered as much as possible to make sure that everything doesn't end unexpectedly for Soma. And then the very next day, at dawn day, almost no one came to their dive bar. The manager decided to find out what the problem was. And the street was just packed with visitors heading to Soma's, and he, along with the meat lady, was preparing everything for them. So, see these beautiful spheres, and all visitors were satisfied and filled with energy. I was completely disbelieved that he could easily take over their business, and he suggested she try it herself. Biting into those balls, she was taken back to the past when she was into sports. and Soma decided to suggest to Devaha to watch the restaurant while he's away. He will be engaged in serious matters. Then there was the selection of people for Super Duper Culture, a contest. Nakima Irina, as always, was against Soma, but everyone else was basically for it. And when the students, looking at the schedule, we saw who was in which group and who would be competing with whom. And the idol girl explained how it all works.
But my gymnastics
Sad
were
about
too.
Soma finally passing, but the blue-haired girl got edged out by her rival. And Soma was pleased that there's still something interesting in this place. His competition's team is Kari, and they went to the main Kari. She knows was the blue-haired one, but they couldn't communicate, so she convinced Soma.
And they were joined by someone else.
People who will also pursue a career. Overall, she started explaining that the most important thing in curry is the seasoning, and it's just like math, mix this, mix that, and you get an incredibly delicious taste. What's needed? Of course, it had to be recorded. And the young man who was... This moment in the lesson showed Soma what really delicious curry looks like, which frankly speaking, Soma will have to compete with, and he said he would defeat it, under any circumstances, so you better not get upset. Meanwhile, the dreamer started panicking that her dish would become even more complex, but he said as the battle daddy approached, I will be calm, and it seemed like summer vacation, but everyone was sweating as if they were beside themselves. They tried to help their girl Symbol cope with her difficulties. Meanwhile, Soma was fully leveraging his Korean award, the right one. The other guys were going hard chilling in the summer, and yet after all these weekends and holidays, when Soma,
Not at all to the
it
body.
will be clear immediately who is where, as they say, who was really involved in
During
what.
the summer, the general manager announced
That announces the
Suddenly
competition.
opened, and the guys have just 1 hour to
Be the
that
doom.
is, and everything.
Green
Overall, the competition began. The judges were super strict with both groups, and the chefs started cooking up something either crazy or incredibly tasty, stressing their strong words, uniforms, or someone could spread the most wonderful delicious smell across the stadium. That was, by the way, Sokolovsky. But here, there are no friends, only competitors, so there's no room for mistakes. And the girl also needed to get ready. Guys, there's only 8 minutes left too. A normal guy went first to cook his food, and you could win up to $100 in this competition. Points.
when
and
they had their first meal.
punching, there were some hopes, but their first contenders almost got 0 points. Then came the one who cooked as if it was some kind of poison, and the smell was so overwhelming you couldn't breathe at the stadium, but she scored an 84. Next.
Udima are overly greedy.
100
grabbing
points.
9.
With big forms, 89,
Next sound.
someone will critique, someone 86. In general, as
All
the
the
contestants
best.
followed one after another, it became clear that it was so
187 is average.
didn't care and needed to impress hard, so go blonde. He used all the knowledge of his restaurant and scored 90 points, while the blonde girl brought a dish that was advised and added lots of ingredients and gathered a large, the highest score of all. The silver-haired girl, as always, took care of her clients and made chill food. Didn't get 88 points, which is quite a lot. 1 from the buddies. The white-haired lady brought such food that the judges were absolutely blown away by the crabs, and he even made the food spicier for those who like it hot, scoring 93 points. The meat lady brought meat as always. We all dreamed about it. Everyone had their fill, and she scored a good amount of points. Then another group went, and the guys began to slowly open up their scores on the board and gain points. No one expected everyone to score so big, and it's like this group is even tougher than the others. And then the brown-eyed competition began. The white-haired with his brown eyes scored a whopping 94 points, becoming its leader. But then Soma appeared, and his curry smelled amazing.
Feel the stadium.
As if even stronger than Belo Brisov's. The judges tried his curry. It's like it just hits you right in the face, but he got only 93 points and lost fair and square to white hair. But more judges gave him more points, so it's unclear who was doomed in the end. But someone got upset by this. All I can say, the full version without cuts will be on my Patreon.